last year before that. We've been going since the last 7, 8, 9 years. One sister up there still helps to sponsor the trip, so we take a couple cars, and we go do the African American Day Parade. And it's funny because when you walk down the street, you get to see what it was all about. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause I thought my dad was nuts. I was like, this guy gotta be bugging. We traveled so much, I knew what America was and what it was. I had to offer what it was about. Living in the sticks ain't cool in the 90s if you're a young person. Rap music is out and gangster rap is out and all these things, influences. And so now, but when we go to New York now, I see, people, when you're going down the street, people will say, Alafia. I'm like, wow, okay. All right. People that say, people that say they know what their gungun is, They know what the people in dashiki, full African dress, a lot of people, a lot more than back in the days. People in the parade represent African tradition way more than back in the days, The people on the, even when we went last time, the guy was like, hey, don't worry, we're going to build it back. Referencing the Horseman, the building that burnt down here last year, a couple years ago. That building burned down. And so, and it burned down a few other buildings over there, So they, you get to see that. You get to see, what that was all about. Because at one point, nobody knew anything about anything African until that little place started right there on 125th Street, the Yoruba Temple. Once the Yoruba Temple came in, they started to teach everything about Africa. You just couldn't find it. They made now you see African vendors everywhere on 125th Street down there. But back in the day, it wasn't none. The first one was my father's people, him and his wives, had the first African store in America where you could buy African shit, right? The only one. And it was called Umoja Marketplace, And they sold dashikis and gave away things, but they couldn't get people to buy the clothing like nowadays. So they would give them away. They manufactured dashikis and gave them away. The people, because they would parade down 125th Street, or freedom parades. You just bust out with your crew, some drums and flag, and they were the first to carry the red, gold, and green flag down the street. Down the middle of the street with the unk in the middle. Down the middle of the street, 125th Street, and they just give people the dashiki. They see somebody standing on the corner, you look like, you've been, drinking all day or whatever, they get you up, say, hey man, put this on, join us, get in the parade. Get in the parade, get in the parade. And that's how it started, grassroots effort. Grassroots, get in the parade, hit the dashiki, man. And then the black man, you put a dashiki on, you give him a feel like, oh man, boy, I'm a chief today, They begin to romanticize with it. And time goes on, African American Day Parade is developed, more temples, the Cubans were there, they were spreading the culture too. Once my dad broke the ice, everybody started, oh yeah, well, of course we were practicing it, because they were afraid to bring it out. The Cubans were, The Cubans had our culture in this country. But they told my dad emphatically, once he got initiated, as the first black American to be initiated into the Yoruba tradition, they told him, look, we did it for you, but don't share this with black people. Don't share this with the niggas in America, because black people won't respect it. They don't understand. They've been churched too far with Jesus, And then Islam further enslaved them. So the black people in America won't understand it, so don't give it to them. But that was my dad's whole plan. So he left the temples and went out and started having public ceremonies. The Cuban Babalawo come to the ceremony one night on Lenox Avenue. They're up there drumming and jamming bimbe. You know how black Americans do it. We all whipped up and stuff. Jamming bimbe. The Cuban Babalawo came in and told him, look, stop that. No. You don't have license to do this. You know what I'm saying? Took my dad in the back, reprimanded him. Cuban Babalawo left. He struck it back up. All night. And then continued to do it. And so he became a nuisance in that way, because to the Cuban people, he was publicizing this secret. They thought it was a secret, or had to be a secret. He said, no, this is our birthright. All black Americans got to know about this. Y'all got it in Cuba, don't you? And they got it in Brazil. Okay, well, why we can't have it? And so that's when he went out and then went further, opened up another shop, a place called the Shango Temple. And then he went further and said, we got to leave New York to do this thing the right way. We need land. So Kwame Nkrumah's journey to the United States in the 60s was a spur for them to start thinking about, wait a minute, we got to have land when we're talking about culture. We got to have goats and chickens and plants and all kind of stuff. So that's why they said, all right, we got to go south. But they was going to go first to up north, upstate New York. Queen Mother Moore. I know who Queen Mother Moore is. Queen Mother Moore is responsible for all this talk about reparations today. She was pushing the reparations movement way back in the day. She started it, actually. Nobody was talking about reparations until she started. She was a part of the Republic of New Africa as well, but she had land in upstate New York, but it was too cold. My dad said it was too cold, so then it came south. In the winter of 1969. Yeah. And then before summertime, they was on some land. Yeah.
So
but the white people around here didn't know how to take them though. Here's these black people walking in big old robes. Wait a minute. They ain't like our good local boys, you know. This is back in the early 70s, you know. In the South, the 70s was more like the 50s, you know what I'm saying? It was further back. So they saw that they would walk around Buford and Gillies and all these big head ties, like Erykah Badu style, beads and stuff. They like, what is these niggas here? And they walk by and the white boys would tap each other like, what the fuck, Billy? Wait a minute, they shopping in our shit, in our Piggly Wiggly. Those boys, they got their own stuff and shit. What they doing up here? Shopping at our stuff. What, they shopping at Roses too? Black people, kind of uppity. So they were curious, as opposed to trying to destroy something or be like, let's get them out of here. They tried it with the law. FBI came, tried to shut it down, and then the local magistrate did. They drum up something every time, you know. They even drummed up, even the DHEC tried, because DHEC said that, you know, we didn't have bathrooms, you know what I'm saying? Which we didn't, people had outhouses, quite good. You know, you in unincorporated areas, so you could live like that if you wish, you know. Then you had the FBI, DHEC, and you had the local sheriff. But the local sheriff in this area was a voodoo man. There's a twist.
You just happened to walk in on that.
A white man. He's a white man. He's a voodoo man. His name was Sheriff Mcteer. And when they asked him on the documentary, well, what about the voodoo colony up the road, Sheriff? He said, he paused and he waited, thought about his words, and he said, one doctor doesn't criticize another doctor. Talking about my dad. You know, because he learned from a guy named Dr. Buzzard, the white sheriff.
Now, what was his background? He was white. What was his background?
He was white. He grew up on the plantations right here with black people. You know, he was the sheriff for 36 years. He became the sheriff in 1926. So he was obviously born way back in close to slavery days. Remember I said here everything is 100 years back. Even today the music is off. You know, so the idea is that he learned from Dr. Buzzard and growing up on plantations around mothers and what they call mammies back in the day.
Yeah.
And they sit like she do right there with that wrap on her head, with that big thing on, and they know about roots. They go in the forest and get roots. Different roots in the forest, you know, just like we're using in Yoruba culture today. Different plants and herbs do different things. You know, physically, spiritually, and monetarily. You know, you even got money trees. So he took that knowledge and used it against the local black people because he knew in order for him to be the sheriff of all of these black people on these islands, he had to know something about their culture. Because these islands didn't have bridges back in the days. So they was really shut off. Really, still African in a lot of ways, even to this day. He used it against them, and so he would do things like know something is going on, find out about it, and then pretend like he's coming to cure it. So he'd say such and such and such and such. Bury a root in people's yard and say the reason for your problems is because of See, the spirit told me this was here. He pulled a root out the ground. Oh, thank you, Sheriff. And he got famous like that. A lot of chicanery, you know. But Dr. Buzzard was real. Dr. Buzzard was the one they said used to turn into a buzzard. That's why they call him Dr. Buzzard. He had Dr. Fox, Dr. Rabbit. These are African medicine men in this area who would transform themselves. And they said if you go to any good court day, you'll see Dr. Buzzard sitting in the back of the courtroom. If you see him sitting in the back of the courtroom, 9 times out of 10, one of the plaintiffs or the defendant is his client. And he sit back there and spit a certain root. And he had one root they call devil shoelace. And if you take that and put it in your pocket, when you get to the courtroom, you tie up the judge's tongue and the lawyer's tongue. They can't even talk and deliver the case. Dismissed. And so they say at any time at Dr. Buzzard's house, you'll see cars from all over the country, license plate. There's a book called Blue Roots you should read. It talks about the whole story. But that's why they came. That's why South Carolina is apropos in terms of why they came here, because somebody did tell them to come to South Carolina. I missed that part because he said that go south, they understand this stuff. You got the people down there called the Gula people, and they still understand root and spirits, and you know what I mean. So a lot of people come here to get work done from Charleston. Interestingly enough. They're from Charleston, South Carolina, and they always looking for that root. And you know the look on their face when they come too, because you can tell the first thing they're gonna say is somebody put something on me, which means people out there know stuff, you know. And in the South, it's always been a weapon. It's always been a weapon against oppression, not each other though. But people would come here with simple things like they didn't like somebody in the choir, so they wanted to work them, and so the villagers got away from that. But back in the day, you could come to the village and get somebody done. But then they got away from it because it was simple foolishness, you know. And so, but I tell you, the D-head magically disappeared. The magistrate died of a heart attack. Who's the other guy? The cat from the FBI. He ended up in a car accident, you know. So then the word went out locally. Boy, everybody fuck with that village down here, boy, they end up dead. Don't go down, boy. You know that stuff, you know, and so that grew a level of respect, but then a level of fear in your own people, because your own people look not going to come because they figure, you know, you know that stuff, and they don't believe in it, they know about it. You know what I mean? Because you don't have to believe in African tradition, you just got to know the science and how it works. And you say, why are you messing with them people? So then FBI came, everybody just magically seemed to. You know, but like we say, the gods and the ancestors, that's why we do it, you know. You know, we don't do this stuff because we think it's, you know, for fun. It keeps us alive and going. Look how many other black organizations that even remotely tried to attempt something like this, you know, just don't exist no more. And a fervor, there's no fanfare around it if they do exist. The SCLC, CORE, I mean, what's the guy named? Tricky Dick actually gave a big multi-$100 million project called Soul City for black people in America. A place where black people could do Oyotunji. It's in North Carolina. It's still there. It's a prison now.
That's crazy. So,
I can't make this stuff up.
So,
it's almost like comedy.
you have a question for the Obakan?
I do, but I got another question that came up from the words I just heard. Because you were talking about the Cuban who came in and said you can't do this. So I'm thinking about, you know, Latinos and such who were able to hide the truth in religious, that they hid it in Catholicism and such. And you brought up the black church. From your perspective, completely 100% from your perspective, what is the use of the black church for black people in this country?
What is the abuse or what is the use?
Yo, you just said answer both and all, please. For real.
Well, the use of the black, remember, the black church started here in South Carolina, in this area. The AME church been start right up yonder. You know, this is where they start. Black people don't know nothing about church more than these people here. We were so, because they needed a way to docilize the African. And they found that the African loves this religious activity. They always in the forest drumming or something. They took the drum, say they cut your hand off if you play the drum, so you couldn't play the drum no more. So you couldn't do the African stuff. And so they said, all right, what do we do? Put them in this is South Carolina history. Put them in the church, put them in the room, and we'll supervise them, because black people love to have somebody talk to them. We love orators. They got to think, because they know our culture better than we do. White people do, because they had to go to Africa. Go in the middle of nowhere. You got to know something about these people. They knew our culture better than we did at the time. So they knew that we needed somebody to speak to us, like a griot, or an oba, or oba oriate, or a griot in some way, and that transcended into the pastor. You know, because Europeans didn't pastoralize like we do, per se. The whole show, even the cadence that they use is from those days. The cadence the preachers use today is from those days here on the plantations when they were still showboating. It's not necessary these days, right? And so with that idea, then the church became in South Carolina the place to go and rally, get shit. You know, that's what the church was. You go in the church and the preacher, once they said, okay, the black people's okay. All right, we don't need to supervise them anymore. The preacher got it, because the preacher is telling the version of the Bible and the dogma to keep you down and keep them up, that they still do today. People don't know that. Preachers were taught by white men to say certain things to black people to hit buttons and make them feel hope. So they keep working on the damn plantation. It's the same way today. It's just a different plantation. And so these South Carolinians used the church then, once the white people backed out and said they're good enough, they used it as a place to start revolutions. That's how, you know, the Charleston 9 that just got killed a couple years ago? Yeah, that was the church. That was the one where they used to plan shit at. You know, they go in there, Denmark VC. Was Denmark VC? Denmark VC, man. What's his name? Denmark?
Emmanuel. Miami.
I'm not posting on my history. Denmark VC? Yeah, Denmark VC.